Hi everyone, welcome to my case proposal. My name is Ruby and I decided to do a media analysis of the Michael Brown shooting and look at the ways in which mainstream media, alternative media, and social media address the issue and what factors were important for them. Before I get into the analysis, I just want to give a little bit of background information about the events that led up to the shooting. Most of the information that I got was from CNN and Fox News, where they mentioned that this story all began when Michael Brown and his friend were shoplifting at a local convenience store, and Officer Wilson responded to that report of robbery, and then during the course of the night, the officer responds to another unrelated call. And after that, he sees Brown and his friend walking in the middle of the street and asks them to get on the sidewalk. Both men failed to comply with the officer's orders. They were minutes from home and said they would be off the street soon. Somehow, the officers, while still in his car, grabbed Brown and a struggle erupted. The officer eventually shot his weapon, which struck Brown in the hand. And at this point, Brown and his friend take off running away from the officer. The officer gets out of the car. The officer is pointing the gun at Brown while his friend is hiding behind a car. This is where there is obviously two different accounts of what happened that led to the officer firing his weapon. Brown's friend, who was with him, stated that Brown was attempting to kind of surrender and let the officer know that he was unarmed and was going in a bid to put up his arms. And the officer fires off numerous bullets. One of the reports said 6. While on the other side, we have Officer Wilson saying that Brown was taunting the officer in some way, saying that he wouldn't shoot him, and then eventually Brown charges at the officer and, as an act of self-defense, fires the multiple bullets. So the way that mainstream media interpreted the news was really relying heavily on the color of both men. From the onset of majority of the articles, their color is one of the first descriptions of the men that is stated there. So obviously it's something that's important, something that frames the article right from the get-go. So you have a kind of a visual representation of both men as you're reading through the events. And even the way the events are described, as I was talking about earlier, there's a robbery, they're walking in the middle of the road, and eventually they were not listening to the officer's orders, and a struggle ensued, and then it led to the shooting. In a lot of the other articles, there's also the constant mention of Brown's physical description, and obviously the officer is saying that he physically charged him. And so, the constant mention of, being 300 pounds and 6'4" really gives you a visual representation of this really big African American man charging at you, and you don't know what to do, and you fire your weapon. And some of the other reports also, after the autopsy had been revealed, discovered marijuana use and the drug use implications of that. And they had some quotes from some doctors stating that this may or may not have impaired his judgment and the decisions he made that led up to the shooting. So definitely the way that these articles are showing what type of kid or teenager Michael Brown was, it's definitely something that paints a particular picture and really tries to discredit his character in a way to justify the officer's actions, and really it's not something that's explicitly stated. As I really tried to critically read the articles, it's very subtle, but yet these little ways that they are placing the information and the particular words that they're using definitely does favor a particular viewpoint. While examining alternative media, I found that the internet becomes a space for discussion outside the dominant framework, and it's one of the best things about it is it's user-generated content where, people are allowed to give their opinions and express their criticisms, and really a space for critical media analysis, which helps to open up our consciousness and to understand that the way the world is presented through mass media is manipulated in a way for us to think certain ideals, and I think alternative media really allows for that to open up and to allow people to come together and to question in numbers, not just kind of, think in your head, but you're allowed to put that out there and get people's attention and get something going. And regarding the shooting, I think alternative media really had a lot of questions about police accountability and legitimacy of the news as well, and the use of police brutality and the use of excessive force, and in this case a weapon, to shoot an unarmed man. And again, everyone in alternative media knew the facts, whereas mainstream media was always about the facts and how they now said this and now said this and now said this. So there's so many things that are always going, and like what's true, what's not, and always up for debate, where alternative media understands that and accepts the general idea of what happened, but looks at how this situation came into play and how this was able to to happen, and the ideals that make these types of situations real. Social media was another great way to let people come together and have new forms of solidarity and understand, like, the social issues that actually underlie the situation. And a couple of the hashtags that were really making an influence were, If They Gun Me Down and Mike Brown. And essentially, one of the major factors was the visual representation of this teenager. One of the pictures that they had chosen from the onset, people critiqued, had depicted Brown in a certain light, which, damaged his credibility, and essentially what happened in the last few minutes of the shooting is really important, and I think that really does damage his character, the way that the media described him. And this is the picture that they decided to use from the onset, like in the beginning when it was first coming out. And a lot of people say that, he's wearing a jersey, he's got the peace sign up, which could be misinterpreted as a gang sign or whatnot. And another picture I found of him was his, I assume, high school graduation photo, and you can totally see the way, like, you would present it to someone that is a little bit non-critical of the media and kind of accepts its powerful grasp. So definitely you can tell the difference. And this set off a wave of controversy on the internet, and they started the hashtag If They Gun Me Down, and people questioned which photo the news would use if they were the victim of a shooting. And it was really interesting to see the response, and in fact really true. If you do look at the pictures that I'm about to show, you could see the way that the dual depiction definitely is something that could easily happen. So here are some examples of people that thought that visual representation of African Americans is misinterpreted and can really be damaging on one's character. I can definitely see people having the wrong idea for pictures, and that's for any picture in general. Came across a couple of points for the future and how we are progressing when there's a lot of information out there and it's hard to kind of make sense of it sometimes. I really do believe that alternative media and social media are great platforms for critical media analysis, where we start to question how the information is presented to us, who has the power and why they are saying things in a way in which it retains their power. And I really think that sets off this divergence of power. I don't mean it's indefinite now, but I do feel like little bits of power are slipping away from news media corporate giants, and really we're doing that through the internet, and we're able to make our voices heard and, critique our government where the government now, law and policy change. In this case, you know, situations that happen with the excessive use of force with police officers is something that has had a lot of attention in the media in the last 5 years. For sure, there's been an increase. And, for example, the recent increase of body cameras for police officers is something that comes out of our questioning the use of police brutality. And I think, that the use of these cameras does really increase accountability and accuracy, and we can really figure out what happened in the last few minutes of the confrontations as such. And so, yeah, and lastly, I really think that research is really important as we go further and into the future, because there's so much information out there that's true, that's false, that's good, that's bad. And I think that we really need to know how that has an effect on us in general, and what that means for us and our values and the way that society is going to progress. So it'll be really interesting to see, how we're going to shape ourselves when we're able to have a platform for a voice and to know things that were really hard to know before because of communication. So yes, thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and I hope that you learned something, you take something away from this, and to, always spread the message that we should always critically look at the way in which information is presented to us, do our own research, and really try to become educated citizens and make the right decision for us and, and our society as we go forward. So thank you.